afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast video with me, your host, Imperial Dane. Today we're going to be talking about something a bit different, not ranking commanders or layers, just a regular episode. No, we're going to be talking about Wehrmacht Tier 4, which, well, to those who actually use it, no, it's not very good. In fact, I sort of checked some more recent videos. Whenever a Wehrmacht player goes for Tier 4, they kind of inevitably end up losing. I mean, hell, there was a video recently, between Slightly Dazed, which apparently is Comrade Dyatlov, and Flawed, where, the Wehrmacht player was way ahead, then he went for Tier 4, then he lost because he went for Tier 4, so, I mean, the pattern's very much there. Tier 4 just isn't very good, so the question is, why isn't Tier 4 very good, and what can be done about it? I mean, sure, someone will say, Dane, Tier 4's great, I'm like top 2000 in 4 versus 4, and I just occasionally win with it. It's great. Yeah, no, again, if we sort of look at the evidence, which again is like common, high ranked Wehrmacht players, most of them don't bother with it. Again, if they do, they strangely end up losing. Like, the closest they'll ever get to it is going for the Tiger, which is straight up just, actually good, but also critically, it's sort of not quite a Tier 4 unit, even if it requires the tech for the 4th tier. You don't actually need the building as well, so it's kind of slightly faster as well. But we can even take a further look there, say just the Panther. I mean, take a look at the Oberkommando West. How many players nowadays actually go for the Panther, not just for the Panzer IV Model J, or straight for the Tiger tank, or even the King Tiger? Again, Panther just isn't seeing much usage in the Oberkommando West either anymore. And that one's more early accessible, so there's clearly just a more core issue at the heart there of Tier 4 for the Wehrmacht, and by extension the Oberkommando West Panther. So what is the deal? I mean, basically, the thing about them, and I think this is going to be a bit tricky to explain in some ways, but I think over what's happened is basically just the perception of how it is perceived by the balance team has basically caused to be sort of positioned in this really weird spot, because look at what Relic keeps saying, Wehrmacht's supposed to be, good in the late game. They'll show you a chart for, the relative power, and the Wehrmacht's sort of one of the late game faction. Again, they're sort of, you're supposed to be, good in the early game, or not good in the early game to compensate, but again, if you look at most Wehrmacht players, they're playing very aggressively because they know they can't rely on the late game. If they try to play in any way that does not play to just going hard in early game, they get crushed because, again, the late game isn't there. So, again, how did we get there? I mean, I think over what's happened is basically just in terms of, relative balancing. They keep balancing against the Oberkommando West, which isn't the Wehrmacht for starters, meaning all allied anti-tank guns and armor and all that has to, be able to take on, say, a King Tiger. And, again, it may sound strange, but sort of look at how many things you can go for King Tigers and how easily they're dealt with. It sort of starts to make sense. Again, also the Oberkommando Panther being slightly more early accessible, again, it just caused them to shift everything downwards, which then kind of makes Wehrmacht Tier 4 worse, because, again, if Allied Tier 3 is being, balanced towards fighting Tier 4 effectively, or higher, then it effectively means, the Wehrmacht Tier 4 is kind of rubbish already, because it's going to be hitting later than the Allied Tier 3, and the Allied Tier 3 is balanced against the Tier 4, which already means they're, the balancing is skewed, because Tier 4 is meant to be a notch above Tier 3. It's meant to be better. And you might say, but damn, the Allies have 4 tiers. No, they don't. None of them do. The British have, effectively 2 tiers. You got the starting tier, then you take up once, then you take up twice. There you go, 2 tiers. And similarly with the Americans, they don't actually have a lot of tiers. In fact, both the Americans and the Soviets have, early initial double tiers. Either supporting company, special rifle, the Americans then platoon and, company command post, and then they, have their, tank tier. But for the Wehrmacht, you do have, an infantry company, the mechanized company, support armor corps, and then the heavy panzer corps. They're the only faction with actually 4 tiers, yet again, for some inexplicable reason, again, it seems like they're all balancing the stuff. So, Wehrmacht Tier 4 to be equal against, Allied Tier 3, which is not supposed to be the case. It's meant to be the late game faction. Tier 4 is meant to be a notch above it. But if you look at the units, and again, if you look at how much they get used, they aren't really that good. In fact, they're kind of like Tier 3 units, but they're priced like Tier 4 a lot of the time. I mean, if we take the Panzer, Soviets have that at Tier 3, the Wehrmacht has it at Tier 4, and yet the Katyusha is better than the Panzer, and that's just, the truth. A Panther in most cases is not going to have the same impact a Katyusha will, for example, yet they cost roughly the same. Again, the Katyusha is just more easily accessible. So, already there, the sort of, things are slightly getting weird. And we have the Panther, again, not even the Oberkommando West is really using it anymore, because it's basically a slightly tougher Panzer IV, but with less anti-air ability on his main gun. And sure, the machine guns are better, but That one requires you to get kind of close, meaning within snare range. And I think that also keeps a lot of them from, using it effectively that way. And beyond that, it doesn't really pack much of a punch. Sure, it has range, but you can't really use it effectively. And otherwise, the Allied tank just has more range, and they're just going to spam them. Like the Jackson is just a tank that is just really good at dealing with other tanks. Like it's effectively a better Panther in some ways. And that's kind of thing. Like the Wehrmacht Panther is so expensive, so difficult to get, yet it's just a slightly tougher Panzer IV, meaning in most cases, people just stick to the Panzer IVs. Or if they really want to deal with tanks, they just go for Stugs, because you can get 3 Stugs for the price of a Panther, and there you go, Bob's your uncle. You suddenly got a lot more firepower, a lot more health. You got roughly the same range, if not slightly better. Sure, you have to manage things a bit more, but you pack more punch, and that's kind of the thing. The Germans late game need firepower more than anything, because again, Allied anti-tank weapons have been tuned to such a degree that Wehrmacht late game armor doesn't really account for anything. Like even anti-tank guns can reasonably easily pierce the armor of the Panther, meaning it's going to come all down to just positioning well and using a firepower, and you don't have the firepower to then take advantage of it. You just don't, because the Panther just shoots too slowly. It just doesn't do enough damage. I mean, they take the Wehrmacht Panther and Companies 1, that one de facto just did more damage than other tanks. And the Companies 2 Panther does not do that. In fact, it can quickly fall behind in terms of DPS compared to all the Allied tanks with a bit of veterancy. So, I mean, in ways, the Panther just isn't very good. Which, again, is reflected increasingly how little we actually see of the Panther. I mean, the Oberkommers Panther on real usage because you can get out faster. At which point, and you also had an ability to increase its damage. Again, that's kind of thing, like, it had a way to increase its damage. Like, the Panther needs to do more damage to be good. I think that's... Like, they can't really get around then. Suddenly you got the Sturmpanzer IV. I mean, right now you're better off just going for double Austrians and just go for a lot of Panzer IVs. Or the Tiger. I mean, after the Tiger got buffed, Sturmpanzer just dropped off the face of the earth. Except for a few eccentrics who really like the Sturmpanzer IV. But everyone who's a bit more sensible just goes for Tigers or sticks to tier 3 with Panzer IVs and Austrians, because they're going to do the job more consistently and with a turret. And that's kind of thing. Again, every Wehrmacht tier 4 unit seems to be balanced like a tier 3 unit, but they're still priced as if though they're somehow magically better. I mean, at this point, Wehrmacht tier 4 is a myth in a fairy tale. But, like, in reality, it's just, glamour. It's a fib, a lie. It just doesn't work. Similarly, I mean, there's just no reward anyways. I mean, for the Wehrmacht, you have to, like, tech through all of these tiers. You have to build, you have to bring pioneers back. You have to manage so much more in terms of resources and, well, management. And there's just nothing there. The Soviets get, like, free infantry upgrades. Well, not because the upgrades themselves are free, but they effectively get it for free for the units. At tier, their tier 3, that just makes the basic units better. The Wehrmacht, meanwhile, again, the actual late game faction gets, you guessed it, nothing. They get nothing that make them better in the late game there. Like, there is no reward for going through all of these tiers to hit tier 4. There is no buff to make your infantry better. Not even like, say, free armoured skirts for your tanks, at least, they don't have to bother with that one. I mean, they might actually just remove veterancy 2 there and give them a better veterancy bonus, just unset the armoured skirts as a separate upgrade, and then they could make like tier 4 to tier 3 and at least get free armoured skirts. Hey, more incentive towards going for the heavy Panzer Corps, maybe some other stuff, but there's just nothing. There's a void, a chasm, an abyss. There's just no reward and no incentive increasingly for the Wehrmacht player to go for tier 4. It is just straight up bad. You might say, but then in 4 versus 4, well, who balances after that? The one time they tried to balance after 4 versus 4s, they broke 1 versus 1 balancing pretty hard. And they never did that in Companies 1 either, and that kind of worked, I guess. Like, the thing is, 4 versus 4 is a completely different beast than 1 versus 1, and it's much more dependent on the players and just other things, which really makes it incredibly difficult to balance. Compared to 1 versus 1, you just got 2 players. That's it. No interference. Like, it's easier and more straightforward to balance it. What should be balanced after? And as you can see there, because they keep trying to balance after 4 versus 4 games, the Wehrmacht just keeps magically suffering because Wehrmacht tier 4 is somehow not allowed to be good because of that. I mean, it just really begs the question, what is going on there? Because, I mean, like, even then, they'll say, okay, they want to buff it, but we can't somehow, just straight up make them better. How about abilities? Like, some sort of abilities, they just give them a slight, trade-off, but then they actually get to deal more damage. That would work out. They're just active abilities that have to be targeted. I mean, the thing is, you sort of again notice one thing about, good players and not very good players. Not very good players tend not to use the abilities a lot, whereas good players do. And, like, not saying much about, 4 versus 4 3 versus 3 players, but I think you better give the Wehrmacht a lot of good abilities to attach the units in tier 4, maybe unlock some others while just getting there. I don't think you'd find like a massive swing there in like how things worked out in like the higher team games. So really something needs to be done though about Wehrmacht Tier 4. My straight up suggestion would be just to increase the firepower of the Panther, like just give it more damage per shot, do the same with the Sturm Panzer, do the same with the Panzer, and then I don't know, add an elite infantry, like some sort of orbital equivalent that just infrared assault rifles for the Panzer Grenadiers that can unlock those and just deal more damage, just something so there's more incentive, more reason to go for tier 4, because right now, as the Wehrmacht, in 1 versus 1, I would say also it's good to green 2 versus 2, go for tier 4, you will lose because you're putting off so much resource and time to pay for some overcosted tier 3 units, which simply put aren't worth it. I mean, it's either that or they just cut down the price of all of these units to make them cheaper. So like, you know, Panther costs a bit more than a Panther 4 in terms of manpower and fuel. And that's it, because otherwise I really just don't think Wehrmacht Tier 4 is going to be worth it. It is just too slow and too weak, and currently you're just better off sticking to Stugs, Ostrins and Panther 4s by far than even remotely considering going for Tier 4, you know, going for the Tiger tank. Which again, kind of works, but you can only ever get one of those and there's still a massive resource investment. So even then there are limits to like how much you can get out of the Tiger tank. So really something needs to change, and I really feel like it just needs to land on the element of firepower. Like, really, that's what the Wehrmacht needs late game now, firepower. Because, again, it does not have the ability to survive hits. It's not this defensive faction. It has to play aggressively no matter what. So they really just need to increase the firepower the Wehrmacht get late game one way or the other. So, I mean, barring that, I just don't really see Wehrmacht Tier 4 ever being, you know, relevant ever again. Unless they actually just bite the bullet, accept that Wehrmacht Tier 4, they kind of just drop the ball on that one very hard and just give the Wehrmacht what it needs, which is more firepower there. Otherwise, again, Wehrmacht Tier 4, I mean, they might as well just delete it from the game and just move on, because really, it just doesn't serve any purpose at this point, unless they give it more firepower. So that's sort of my thought. It's something I've been wrestling with a lot of time if I should make this video, but in the end, I feel like I have to. Like, it's just kind of silly. Like, again, they keep insisting, but the Wehrmacht is a late game faction. Like, every time you sort of play it and sort of watch others play it, and you sort of watch the ones like to win, you realize, no, if you try to play the Wehrmacht like that, you will lose. You have to play the Wehrmacht as a faction that isn't actually meant to be an early game, late game faction, but as an early aggressive faction. Otherwise, you will lose, because again, Tier 4 doesn't work. So that is my video here, and of course, I'll be sure a lot of people saying me are wrong. I'm factually wrong, of course, while ignoring every argument I make for the case, and because I'm sure they're absolutely top 10,000 players in 4 versus 1, thusly they know everything about balancing the game. But really, realistically, if you sort of look at 1 versus 1 and 2 versus 2, like, it's just not very good. Most players don't bother with it, and it's just kind of rubbish. So yeah, Relic needs to like buff Tier 4. They need to give more firepower, or they just need to accept that it's screwed up and delete it and just give the Wehrmacht more early game units, because otherwise, I mean, it just doesn't make even the remotest slight of sense. So that's sort of it here from the Imperial Dane, the Master of Propaganda. Will they ever do it? Yeah, I hope, but like, realistically, so far when they tried to buff Tier 4, they just kind of like did the debate and then just sort of nerf stuff again, because again, heavens forbid, the Wehrmacht apparently, you know, functions as the faction it was actually designed to be. So that's it for me today. Of course, there'll be other videos out as well, so thank you all, and of course, if you do, you can subscribe and like and press the bell button so you know more likely to get videos from me. This is Imperial Dane, signing off. Cheers.